Grand Operational Simulation Series, or GOS, Basic Rules. Prepared Assault Mode. Prepared Assault Mode, PA mode, maximizes attack capability and advance after combat. Units in this mode are marked with a Prepared Assault marker. PA mode restrictions. The following units may never enter PA mode: headquarters units, artillery units, units in a hex that is overstacked, out of supply units, units marked with a Fatigue 2 marker, out of command, units that could not physically PA move to a hex that is adjacent to an enemy unit. Movement. Units in PA mode move using Prepared Assault movement. Engineer units in PA mode can assist other units in cross-river movement. Combat. Units in PA mode must participate in a GA if adjacent to an enemy unit at the start of the GA segment. PA units may combine with adjacent units that are also in PA mode to conduct a multi-hex ground assault. Are not restricted to a 1-hex advance after ground assault. Receive a 1-column shift in their favor when conducting an offensive ground assault. May be supported by a greater number of artillery and air units. Immediately revert to tactical mode at the conclusion of the GA segment. Receive no benefit for terrain, population features, or FWs, fortified areas, when the target of an FS mission. Are always observed by adjacent enemy units, even if in covering terrain. May always observe enemy units in adjacent hexes regardless of the terrain or features. No low fuel. If a mech unit's formation is in a low-no fuel state, the formation must have received a result of at least 6 movement points on its fuel level DR, chose to designate a number of units less than or equal to result of the DR to move their full MA. Only those units may enter PA mode. Note, leg units are not affected by fuel levels and thus are not affected by this rule. Exploitation or exploit mode. Units in exploit mode are marked with an exploitation marker. These units move during friendly exploitation phases. They may not voluntarily move in any other phase. To be placed in exploit mode, a unit must be a mech unit, be leg unit that is motorized using truck points, not be adjacent to an enemy unit. Note, units are not forced to leave exploit by an enemy unit's presence, except for 5.3.4 Bravo. Formation. Units do not enter or exit exploit mode individually. They must do so as part of a formation, or BG. To enter exploit mode, all MU currently on the map of a formation or BG, this includes attached units, must enter exploit mode. Mechanized divisional assets units can be placed in exploit mode along with a subformation of the same formation. Note, a division could have all units of one of its subformations not enter exploit mode, however, it could not have part of that subformation enter exploit mode while other units of the same subformation do not. Exception. Individual recon units with the specific recon symbol, CUTC. This includes armored cars but does not include light tanks, may be put into exploit mode without having to place the whole formation into exploit mode. All other rules regarding entering exploit mode are in effect. Recon units in exploit mode may not stack with units not in exploit mode. Note, 6.1.2, 6.1.3, and 6.1.4 apply, meaning that an individual recon unit for purposes of this case may include a German AFV company, a Z-step unit, and or an engineer unit as allowed by those rules. Player tip. This means that divisional recon can be used to exploit without having to place the whole division into exploit mode. Keeping a recon unit in exploit directly behind the front line allows a player to possibly take advantage of an opening in the opposing side's line. Fuel. A formation in a no-fuel status cannot be placed in exploit mode and must immediately revert to tactical mode if fuel points are not allocated to it during the AM transport and logistics phase. Re-entering exploit mode. Individual units that have been forced out of exploit mode involuntarily by 5.3.4 Bravo may re-enter it during a subsequent mode determination phase if their formation or subformation is still in exploit mode. Movement. Each side has 2 exploitation phases in each game turn. During the night game turns and ENA periods, each side may use only one of its 2 available exploitation phases. We've talked about that before. A unit in exploit mode may not utilize strat road movement. Units using exploit mode within 6 hexes of an enemy unit may be the target of a GS mission. Designer's note: during a night game turn or ENA period, the player must choose one of the 2 friendly exploit phases to move all his units in exploit mode. Movement allowance. A unit may use half of its normal MA during each AM/PM friendly exploitation phase and its full MA during one of its exploitation phases in a night game turn or ENA period. During a night ENA game turn, a player may not move some of his units in one exploit phase and different units in the other exploit phase. Enemy units. Units in exploit mode pay no additional movement points to move adjacent enemy units if the hex being entered contains movement CT. A unit in exploit mode that begins an exploitation phase adjacent to an enemy unit in PA mode must retreat. The unit may retreat up to the maximum retreat distance allowed by 13.9.4. After completion of this retreat, the unit reverts to tactical mode. The enemy player may advance, not required, units in PA mode 1 hex and replace the PA marker with a tactical assault marker, or the marker may simply be removed, with the unit reverting back to tactical mode, owning player's choice. Supply. A unit with on-hand supply goes out of supply after it moves during an exploitation phase. A unit that is marked out of supply must leave exploit mode immediately. Overrun. Units in exploit mode may conduct overruns during movement. Units conducting an overrun may be subject to artillery FS missions. Ground assault. Units in exploit mode may not conduct an offensive GA. They may participate in a defensive GA but suffer a 1-column unfavorable shift on the GA CRT. Maneuver reserve mode represents the retention of a formation from activity so that it can be introduced into battle at a later time that is more advantageous to the owning side. Placing units into MR. Units are not placed in MR mode individually. They enter as part of a subformation or formation. To enter MR mode, all units except for artillery units of a formation subformation must be placed in MR mode. To enter MR, all units of the formation subformation must be in Gen S, within 6 hexes of its superior headquarters, at least 4 hexes away from an enemy unit. Note: units attached to a formation subformation may enter MR mode if the formation does so. A maneuver reserve marker is then placed on the headquarters unit to show that all of its units, with the possible exception of artillery units, are in MR mode. Okay, the marker is placed on the headquarters unit. Example 1. Units of the 30th Infantry Division are attached to the 2nd Armored Division. If the 2nd Armored Division enters MR, the attached 30th Infantry Division units would enter also. Example 2. CCB of the 2nd Armored Division is attached and operating as an independent subformation. The owning player could place CCB and attached units into MR mode. Limitations. A formation cannot enter MR mode if it has been in a MR bonus period. Okay. A formation cannot enter MR mode if it has been in a MR bonus period in any of the previous 7 game turns. Fuel. Prior to entering MR mode, mech formations must have been allocated enough FPs to put them in normal fuel status, not low or no fuel. This allocation must have been accomplished prior to the formation going into MR. No further fuel allocations are needed while in MR. When the formation is released from MR, it is considered to be in a normal fuel status for the remainder of that game day and for 1 additional game day. Example, a division is released the AM, PM, or night game turn of 24 December. The formation would not require fuel again until the AM game turn of 26 December. Effects. Once a formation is in MR, its units may not move until the formation is released from MR mode. For a formation to remain in MR mode, it can be adjacent to an enemy unit. If a unit violates these restrictions, the entire command immediately enters tactical mode and receives no MR bonus. Remove the MR marker from the headquarters. If additional units or subformations are attached to the formation or subformation that is currently in MR mode, the formation adds on game day for each subformation added to the total time required to receive the MR bonus. MR mode to exploit mode. Formations, subformations, and individual recon units in MR may enter exploit mode at the beginning of any friendly exploitation phase, whether the formation or unit is eligible for an MR bonus yet or not. This is an exception to the rule that all voluntary mode changes occur during the mode determination phase. If a formation or an individual recon unit leaves MR mode to enter exploit mode in this manner, it loses any game turns it has accumulated toward an MR bonus. Example, a formation has been in MR mode for 4 game turns. The formation could exit MR during their friendly exploitation phase. However, since it has not spent requisite number of game turns in MR, the formation would not be eligible for the MR bonus, and if it re-enters MR mode, it would be at turn 1 for MR bonus determination. MR bonus. Once a formation has been in MR mode for at least 9 consecutive game turns, it is eligible to receive an MR bonus. This bonus lasts for 2 full game turns. The MR bonus applies to all units except MR mode. Exiting. Applies to all units exiting MR mode and entering any other mode if they meet the above criteria. Example 1. A German formation is released from MR during the German mode determination phase of the 20 December PM game turn, would receive the MR bonus until the beginning of the German mode determination phase of the 21st December AM game turn. ENA period does not count as a game turn for this purpose. Example 2. A German formation is released from MR mode during the German exploitation phase of the German player turn on the 20 December PM game turn. The formation would receive the MR bonus until the beginning of the German exploitation phase of the German player turn of the 21st December AM game turn. ENA period does not count as a game turn for this purpose. Yikes. Movement allowance. Formations are individual recon units that move during a movement or exploitation phase while in an MR bonus period roll on the fuel level table using the out of reserve line to determine their MA bonus for the phase. In the case of units moving during an AM/PM exploitation phase, add the MR bonus and any leader bonus prior to having their MA. This DR is conducted each movement or exploitation phase. Combat. GAs involving units that are in an MR bonus period receive a 1-column shift in their favor. This includes units in an MR bonus period that are in exploit mode conducting an overrun. Units in a MR bonus period are automatically in Gen S. ENA units that are activated during the first ENA period after being released from MR are not subject to fatigue for operating in an ENA period.